The great chamber of the Galactic Council fell silent as High Arbiter rose from his seat. His tall gray body cast a long shadow across the polished floor. Representatives from 47 species watched as he lifted a glowing tablet and began to read. "Humanity, you have been judged," said. His voice echoed through the vast hall. "In 50 years of contact with civilized space, your species has shown itself to be dangerous. You expand without permission. You settle worlds that do not belong to you. You refuse to follow our laws on population growth. You build warships when we tell you to stop." Captain Jack Monroe stood alone in the center of the chamber. He was the only human allowed inside. Behind him, through the massive windows, he could see the Exile fleet waiting in orbit. 200 ships, 3 million people, everything humanity had left. "We did what we had to do to survive," Jack said. His voice was calm but firm. "Every world we settled was empty. Every ship we built was for defense. We meant no harm to anyone." Ambassador X, a serpentine creature with shimmering scales, hissed from his seat. "You meant no harm? Your colonies grew faster than any species in recorded history. Your ships patrol space that belongs to the Council. You are a threat to galactic peace." Jack looked around the chamber. He saw no friendly faces. Every representative watched him with fear or hatred or both. 50 years ago, humans had discovered faster-than-light travel and joined the galactic community. They had been so hopeful then, so excited to meet other intelligent life. Now they stood here about to lose everything. "What is our sentence?" Jack asked. "Set down the tablet. Exile, you will take your fleet and your people beyond the boundary line. You will go to the outer rim and never return. Any human found in civilized space after 30 standard days will be destroyed. This is the judgment of the Galactic Council." The chamber erupted in clicking and hissing sounds of approval. Jack felt his heart sink, but he kept his face neutral. He would not give them the satisfaction of seeing him break. "The outer rim is a wasteland," Jack said. "Your own surveys say nothing can survive there. You are sentencing us to death." Tilted his head. "That is not our concern. Perhaps you should have thought about consequences before you became a threat to us all." Jack wanted to argue, he wanted to fight, but he knew it would change nothing. The Council had made their decision long before this trial began. This was just a show for the other species, a warning about what happened to those who grew too powerful too quickly. He turned and walked out of the chamber without another word. The shuttle ride back to the fleet was quiet. Jack sat alone, staring out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there was Earth that he would never see again. His children had been born on colony worlds. His would be born in exile. Commander Sam Porter met him at the docking bay. Sam was a tall man with gray hair and hard eyes. He had been a soldier for 40 years. "What did they say?" Sam asked. "Exile outer rim, 30 days. Sam's jaw tightened. "We should fight. We have 200 ships. We could." "We could die," Jack interrupted. "The Council has thousands of warships. They would destroy us in hours. No, Sam, we survive. We adapt. We prove them wrong." They walked together through the corridors of the flagship, the New Horizon. Crew members stopped and saluted as they passed. Jack could see the fear in their eyes. They had all heard the rumors about the outer rim. Pirates, radiation storms, barren worlds where nothing grew. Dr. Lisa Vance was waiting in the conference room. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and quick hands. As the fleet's chief scientist, she had spent the last week studying everything known about the outer rim. "It's bad," Lisa said as soon as Jack entered. "Council surveys from 60 years ago say the region is nearly uninhabitable. Extreme temperatures, toxic atmospheres, very few water sources. They sent criminals there once as punishment. None survived more than a year." "Can we terraform?" Jack asked. Lisa hesitated. "Maybe, with enough time and resources, but it will take years, possibly decades, before we can grow our own food reliably." Sam slammed his fist on the table. "This is murder. They're killing us without firing a shot." Jack sat down heavily. For a long moment he said nothing. He thought about his daughter, Amy, who worked in engineering. He thought about his old friend Ben, who managed their supplies. He thought about Kate, their communications officer, who had worked so hard to build relationships with other species. All of it had been for nothing. Or had it? "We have 3 million people," Jack said slowly. "We have engineers and scientists and farmers and soldiers. We have ships and tools and knowledge. The Council thinks they're throwing us away, but maybe they're making a mistake." Lisa looked at him with curiosity. What do you mean? The outer rim is lawless. No rules, no restrictions. No one telling us how fast we can grow or what we can build. Jack stood up and something new burned in his eyes. The council feared us because we adapted too quickly. In civilized space, that was a problem. In the outer rim, it might be our greatest strength. Sam frowned. You think we can actually build something out there? I think we have no choice but to try. The next 30 days passed in a blur of activity. The fleet gathered everyone they could. They packed every ship with supplies, equipment, and people. Some humans refused to leave, choosing to take their chances hiding in civilized space. Jack knew he would never see them again. On the final day, the Exile fleet assembled at the boundary line. A wall of council warships waited to make sure they left. Jack stood on the bridge of the New Horizon, watching the border approach. Young Amy Dawson, his daughter, stood beside him. She was barely 20 years old, with her mother's dark hair and her father's stubborn chin. She had joined the engineering corps just 2 years ago. What's going to happen to us? She asked quietly. Jack put his hand on her shoulder. I don't know, but I know this. We're not beaten. We're not broken. We're just beginning. The fleet crossed the boundary line. Civilized space disappeared behind them, replaced by the dark unknown of the outer rim. Jack activated the fleet-wide communication channel. His voice reached every ship, every person, every corner of their small nation in exile. Today, the Galactic Council thought they defeated humanity, he said. They were wrong. They didn't defeat us. They unleashed us, and one day they will understand their mistake. The fleet sailed on into the darkness, carrying the last hope of the human race toward whatever destiny awaited them. 2 years had passed since the exile, and every day was a fight to survive. The planet they called New Providence was a harsh world of endless deserts and burning winds. The sun beat down without mercy. Water was so rare that every drop was counted and recycled. People lived in underground shelters carved into the rock, hiding from the deadly heat of the day. Captain Jack Monroe walked through the tunnels of their largest settlement, checking on his people. Everywhere he looked, he saw exhaustion, thin faces, tired eyes, but he also saw determination. No one had given up, not yet. Dr. Lisa Vance met him at the entrance to the terraforming lab. She looked older than her years, worn down by endless work and little sleep. Any progress? Jack asked. Lisa nodded slowly. Some. The moisture collectors are working better now. We planted the first test crops last week. If they survive, we might have real food in 6 months. If they survive, Jack repeated. It's the best I can do with what we have. Jack knew she was right. They had brought supplies for maybe 2 years. After that, they needed to grow their own food or die. Everything depended on Lisa and her team. In the command center, Sam Porter was studying tactical displays. His face was grim as always. Another convoy was hit yesterday, Sam reported. Pirates, they took everything, food, medicine, power cells, 12 dead. Jack closed his eyes. The outer rim was not empty, as the council had claimed. It was home to pirates, criminals, and outcasts from a dozen civilizations. The most dangerous was a warlord named, who controlled a small empire of raiders and thieves. How many attacks this month? Jack asked. 7. We're losing faster than we can replace. Ben entered the room, carrying a data tablet. Ben was a round-faced man who had once managed supply chains on Earth. Now he managed the survival of 3 million people. I have some interesting news, Ben said. We're not alone out here, not just pirates, I mean. There are other groups, refugees, exiles from other species, traders who work outside council law. Jack looked up with interest. Traders. One of them made contact yesterday. A nomad called. She wants to meet. 2 days later, Jack sat across from in a small chamber near the surface. She was unlike any alien he had ever seen. Her body was long and thin, covered in soft blue fur. 6 eyes blinked at him from a face that might have been friendly or hungry. It was hard to tell. You are the humans, said. Her voice was musical, almost like singing. Everyone is talking about you, the species that was thrown away by the council. That's us, Jack said. What do you want? I am a trader. I go places others cannot. I bring things others need. You need many things, yes. Jack nodded carefully. We need everything, but we have very little to trade. His eyes sparkled. You have skills. I have watched your people. You fix things that others say cannot be fixed. You build machines from scraps. This is valuable in the Outer Rim. Over the next few months, a careful relationship grew between the humans and trading network. Human engineers repaired alien technology in exchange for food and supplies. Word spread across the Outer Rim that these newcomers were useful, even if they were strange. But not everyone was happy about the humans. Warlord had ruled this part of the Outer Rim for decades. He did not like competition. He did not like change. And he definitely did not like a new species building power in his territory. The attack came without warning. Amy Dawson was working in the eastern outpost when the sky turned red with enemy ships. She barely made it to a shelter before the bombs started falling. The ground shook, walls cracked, screams filled the air. When the attack ended, half the outpost was gone. 300 people were dead. Months of supplies had been stolen or destroyed. Amy sat in the ruins, covered in dust and blood, staring at nothing. A young man named Cole found her there. He was a pilot, one of the few who had survived by getting his ship off the ground. "Amy," Cole said gently, "we need to go, more ships might come." She looked up at him with empty eyes. "My father was right, they want us dead, everyone wants us dead." Cole helped her to her feet. "Then we don't die, we fight back." Back in the main settlement, Jack called an emergency meeting. His commanders gathered around the table, their faces hard with anger and grief. "Enough," Sam said. "We've been hiding and running for 2 years, it's time to hit back." "With what?" Ben asked. "We have barely 30 combat-ready ships, has hundreds." "We have something better," Lisa said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. "Human creativity, human engineering. We've been upgrading our ships with salvaged alien technology. Our weapons are better now. Our shields are stronger, and we understand how fights." Kate, the communications officer, spoke up. "I've been monitoring their signals. They're arrogant, careless. They don't expect prey to fight back." Jack stood and looked at each of his people in turn. These were not just soldiers and scientists anymore. They were survivors. They had been pushed to the edge of death and refused to fall. "For 2 years we've been victims," Jack said. "We've survived, but surviving isn't enough. If we want to build something real, we need to stop being prey. We need to become predators." Sam grinned. It was not a nice grin. "Now you're talking." The planning took weeks. They gathered every ship, every weapon, every able pilot. Amy Dawson worked around the clock, installing new systems she had designed herself. Her power converters could triple the output of their engines. Her shield modifications could absorb twice the damage. Cole trained the pilots in new tactics. Human tactics, quick, aggressive, unpredictable. The alien pirates fought in patterns, following old traditions. Humans fought to win. On the night before the mission, Jack visited his daughter in the engineering bay. "You should stay here," he said. "It's safer." Amy shook her head. "Someone needs to keep those ships running during the battle. I'm going." Jack looked at her for a long moment. She was not a child anymore. She was a woman hardened by exile, driven by purpose. "Your mother would be proud of you," he said. Amy smiled sadly. "Let's make sure we survive long enough to make her proud." The fleet launched at dawn, rising from the desert world like a swarm of angry insects. 32 ships against an empire of pirates. It should have been suicide. But humans had never been good at knowing when to give up. The fortress moon of Warlord hung in space like a fist. It was covered with weapons, shields, and the wreckage of everyone who had ever tried to attack it. For 40 years, no one had been foolish enough to try. Until now. Commander Sam Porter stood on the bridge of the assault carrier Thunder's wake, watching the moon grow larger on the... Behind him, 31 human ships held formation. It was the entire combat fleet of humanity. If they failed here, there would be nothing left to defend their people. "All ships report ready," Kate announced from her station. Sam nodded. "Begin the approach. Stay in formation until we reach the first defense line." The pirate sensors detected them immediately. Warning lights flashed across the fortress. Ships began launching from hidden bays. His voice boomed across all channels, laughing. "Little humans, you come to die. I will hang your captain's head from my throne." Sam smiled grimly. "He talks too much, launch the decoys." A dozen small drones shot forward, each projecting the signal of a full-sized warship. The pirate defenders spread out to engage what they thought was a much larger fleet. In the confusion, the real human ships changed course. diving toward a weak point in the defenses that Kate had identified weeks ago. The first pirate cruiser exploded before it even knew the humans were there. Amy Dawson sat in the engineering bay of the Thunder's wake, watching power readings dance across her screens. Her new systems were working perfectly. The engines ran hotter and faster than anything the pirates had ever seen. The shields absorbed hit after hit without failing. "Engineering to bridge," she called. "You've got full power, don't waste it." Sam didn't waste it. The human fleet cut through the pirate defenses like a knife. They didn't fight like the cautious, traditional species of the Council. They fought like humans, fast, aggressive, adapting to every situation in real time. Cole led the fighter squadron in a dangerous run through the fortress trenches. Enemy guns tracked him, but he was too quick, too unpredictable. He destroyed 3 gun towers before they could even lock onto him. "This is almost fun," he shouted over the radio. "Stay focused," Sam warned. "We haven't won yet." The battle raged for 3 hours. Human ships took damage. Some were destroyed. But for every human ship that fell, 10 pirate vessels burned. The new weapons Amy had designed tore through enemy shields. The new tactics Sam had developed left the pirates confused and desperate. Finally, the Thunder's wake reached the fortress itself. Sam led a boarding team through the shattered airlocks, fighting room by room through the metal corridors. Guards were fierce, but they had never faced anything like human soldiers fighting for their survival. They found in his throne room, surrounded by his last defenders. He was a massive creature, covered in thick armor plates and scars from 100 battles. He held a weapon the size of a human in each of his 4 hands. "You cannot win," growled. "Kill me and another warlord will take my place. The Outer Rim will always belong to the strong." Sam lowered his weapon slightly. "You're right. The Outer Rim belongs to the strong. That's why it belongs to us now." The final fight was brief and brutal. When it ended was in chains and his empire was finished. Word spread across the Outer Rim like fire. The humans had done the impossible. They had defeated the most feared warlord in the region. They had done it with a tiny fleet, using nothing but courage and cleverness. Everything changed after that. 4 years after the exile, New Providence was no longer a desperate survival camp. It was a thriving city. Lisa Vance's terraforming had transformed the desert into fields of green. Water flowed through channels carved into the rock. Children played in the sun without fear. And they were no longer alone. Refugee ships arrived every week. Exiled species, escaped slaves, outcasts who had nowhere else to go. Jack Monroe welcomed them all as long as they agreed to work together and follow human law. "We were thrown away by the Council," Jack told them. "So were you. Together we can build something better than what we left behind." Ben's trading network expanded across the entire region. Human goods became valuable everywhere. Human engineers could fix anything. Human medicine could cure diseases that had killed millions. Human teachers could train workers and soldiers and scientists. Kate established diplomatic relations with a dozen minor species and factions. She was patient and respectful, never demanding, always offering fair deals. Slowly, trust grew between humans and their new neighbors. Lisa Vance shared her terraforming technology freely with anyone who asked. Barren worlds that had been written off for centuries began to bloom with life. Species that had been slowly dying out found new hope. The Outer Rim Alliance was born. It was not an empire. Humans did not conquer their neighbors or demand tribute. Instead, they created a partnership based on trade, mutual defense, and shared prosperity. Each species kept its independence but agreed to work together against common threats. At the center of it all were the humans. The species that had been exiled to die had become the heart of a new civilization. Amy Dawson became famous across the Alliance. Her inventions powered ships and cities throughout the region. Young engineers from a dozen species came to study under her. She was only 24 years old, but she had already changed the galaxy. Cole commanded the Alliance patrol fleet, protecting traders and hunting down the pirates who still lurked in the dark corners of space. He had become a hero, though he hated being called one. And in the Great Council Chamber of New Providence, Jack Monroe presided over meetings of species that had never spoken to each other before. They argued. They disagreed. Sometimes they shouted. But they also cooperated, compromised, and built something new together. Sam Porter stood beside him, as always. The old soldier had softened slightly over the years, though he still watched everyone with suspicious eyes. "You know the council is watching," Sam said quietly during one meeting. Jack nodded. "Let them watch, let them see what we've built." Far away in the gleaming towers of council space, Ambassador X read the latest intelligence reports with growing unease. The humans had not died in the outer rim. They had not even struggled. They had thrived. 40% of the outer rim was now under human influence. Trade was flowing across the boundary line, despite council laws. Several council species had begun secret negotiations with human merchants. X brought the reports to High Arbiter. "We may have made a mistake," he said carefully. Stared at the data for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was cold. "We will correct it." Back on New Providence, Jack stood on a balcony overlooking the city he had built. His daughter Amy joined him, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "You look worried," she said. "The council won't ignore us forever," Jack replied. "They exiled us because they feared what we might become. Now we've become exactly what they feared." Amy handed him a cup. "So what do we do?" Jack looked out at the city, at the ships landing and launching, at the people of 100 species working together in the streets below. "We do what we've always done," he said. "We survive, we adapt, we refuse to break." Amy smiled. "That sounds like a plan." Above them, the stars shone down on a humanity that had risen from the ashes of exile. Whatever came next, they would face it together. 7 years after the exile, the Galactic Council met in emergency session. The Great Chamber was filled with tension. Representatives whispered to each other, their voices sharp with fear. High Arbiter called for silence. His gray face was hard as stone. "You have all seen the reports," he said. "The humans did not die in the outer rim, they built an empire." Ambassador X stood to speak. His scales rippled with unease. "Not an empire, an alliance. They share power with other species. They trade fairly. They have not attacked anyone who did not attack them first." "Does that make them less dangerous?" demanded. "They now control resources that rival our own. Their technology improves every year. Their population grows without limit. Everything we feared has come true." A representative from the collective raised her thin arm. "Perhaps we should negotiate. Open trade relations. Bring them back into civilized space under proper supervision." "Negotiate?" spat the word. "They were exiled for defying our laws. If we welcome them back now, every species will see that defiance is rewarded. Our authority will crumble." The debate continued for hours. Some argued for military action. Others counseled patience. A few suggested that the exile had been a mistake from the beginning. In the end, made the decision alone. "We will impose a complete trade embargo on human territories," he announced. "Any council species caught trading with humans will face severe penalties. We will increase patrols along the boundary line, and we will prepare our fleets for the possibility of war." On New Providence, Jack Monroe received the news with a heavy heart. He had hoped the council would eventually accept what humanity had become. Instead, they were choosing conflict. Kate stood beside him in the command center. "They're scared," she said. "Scared species make bad decisions." "I know, but their bad decisions could kill millions of people." The embargo hurt, but not as much as the council expected. Human traders had been building relationships for years. Many council merchants were willing to break the law for the right price. Goods continued to flow across the boundary line through secret channels. Then came the incident. A human trading vessel called the Steady Hand was carrying medical supplies to a colony near the border. Council patrol ships intercepted it and demanded it turn back. When the captain refused, they opened fire. The Steady Hand was destroyed. All 40 people aboard were killed. When the news reached New Providence, the reaction was fury. People filled the streets, demanding revenge. Alliance ships armed themselves for war. The entire outer rim burned with anger. Sam Porter wanted blood. Those were civilians, merchants. They killed them for carrying medicine. Jack understood the rage. He felt it himself, but he also knew that acting in anger could destroy everything they had built. "We do not fire the first shot," Jack said firmly. "We demand an apology and compensation for the families. We give them a chance to make this right. And if they refuse, then we prepare for what comes next." Kate sent the official demand through diplomatic channels. The Council's response came within days. Any wrongdoing. The humans had violated the embargo. The patrol ships had acted appropriately. There would be no apology, no compensation, nothing. Jack gathered his senior commanders. The room was quiet, but the tension was thick enough to cut. They won't back down, Kate reported. I've been talking to sympathetic diplomats inside Council space. They say is pushing for war. He believes this is his last chance to destroy us before we become too strong. How many ships do they have? Sam asked. Ben checked his data. Over 2,000 warships, maybe more. We have roughly 300 in the Alliance fleet. Those odds are not good, Cole said quietly. Lisa Vance spoke up from her corner. There's something else. I've been studying Council worlds. Many of them are dying. Their terraforming technology is old and failing. Dozens of planets are losing their ability to grow food. They're facing a slow-motion catastrophe. Jack looked at her with interest. Can we help them? Our terraforming is better than theirs, much better. If we shared it freely, we could save billions of lives. Lisa hesitated. But that would mean making peace, not war. The room fell silent. Everyone understood what Lisa was suggesting. The Council was preparing to attack, but inside their perfect civilization, things were falling apart. Humans had something they desperately needed. It won't work, Sam said bitterly. They hate us too much. They'd rather die than accept help from humans. Maybe, Jack admitted. But we have to try. Kate, can you get me a meeting with the sympathetic diplomats? I want to offer them a deal. Kate nodded. It's dangerous. If finds out, he'll call it treason. Let him. The secret meeting took place on a small station at the edge of Council space. Jack came alone, risking his life to speak with representatives from 5 Council species. They were nervous, looking over their shoulders constantly. Jack laid out his offer simply. We don't want war, we never did, but we won't be destroyed either. If the Council attacks us, we will fight back with everything we have. Many will die on both sides. A diplomat leaned forward. What alternative do you offer? Peace, trade, cooperation. We have technology that can save your dying worlds. We have resources you need. And we're willing to share not as masters but as partners. The diplomats exchanged glances. Jack could see the conflict in their eyes. They had been taught to fear and hate humans, but they could also see the logic in his words. We'll never agree, one of them said. Then maybe needs to stop being the one who decides. It was a bold statement. Jack was suggesting that the Council's own members should oppose their leader. It was the kind of thing that could start a civil war. But the seeds were planted. When Jack returned to New Providence, he found the Alliance fleet fully assembled. 300 warships from a dozen species, all gathered around the human. They were ready for war. Sam met him at the landing platform. The Council fleet is massing at the boundary line. Our scouts count over 2,000 ships. They'll attack within weeks. Jack looked up at the sky, filled with the lights of his fleet. Then we give our friends inside the Council as much time as we can. We meet the enemy at the border. We show them we won't run. And we hope that some of them start asking questions about whether this war is really worth fighting. Amy Dawson ran up to embrace her father. I heard you went into Council space alone. That was stupid. Jack smiled. Probably, but sometimes you have to take risks. Did it work? I don't know yet, but I know one thing. When that fleet comes for us, we won't be facing it alone. Every species in this alliance will stand with us. Every person who was thrown away by the Council will fight beside us. He put his arm around his daughter and looked out at the gathered fleet. They exiled us because they thought we were dangerous, Jack said quietly. They were right, but not in the way they imagined. We're dangerous because we inspire people. We show them that the weak can become strong, that the outcasts can build something beautiful, and that's something the Council can never destroy, no matter how many ships they send. The stars shone down on New Providence, and the drums of war began to beat. The boundary line stretched across space like an invisible wall. On one side, the massive fleet of the Galactic Council waited in perfect formation. 2,000 warships, gleaming and powerful, representing the combined might of civilized space. On the other side, the Outer Rim Alliance held their ground. 300 vessels, battered and rebuilt, crewed by the exiled and forgotten. High Arbiter stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Judgment. This was the moment he had prepared for. Today, the human problem would be solved forever. All ships advance, he commanded. Destroy them all. The Council fleet surged forward like a tidal wave of fire and metal. On the bridge of the New Horizon, Captain Jack Monroe watched them come. His face was calm, but his heart was racing. Everything they had built over 8 years came down to this moment. All Alliance ships, this is Monroe, he broadcast. We are not fighting for conquest today. We are fighting for the right to exist. Show them what that means. Commander Sam Porter took tactical control. His voice was steady as he issued orders. All wings, execute pattern Delta. Draw them into the debris field. Make them pay for every inch of space. The battle began with a thunderous exchange of fire. Council ships had superior numbers, but Alliance vessels were faster and more agile. Amy Dawson's engineering miracles proved their worth immediately. Human shields held against blasts that should have torn them apart. Human weapons punched through Council armor with devastating effect. Cole led the fighter squadrons in a dancing weave through the chaos. He had trained his pilots to think like humans, to adapt and improvise. They struck at weak points, vanished before retaliation could come, and struck again somewhere else. But numbers mattered. For every Council ship destroyed, 3 more took its place. The Alliance fleet was pushed back inch by bloody inch. In the engineering bay of the New Horizon, Amy Dawson worked furiously at her console. Her team had been preparing a secret weapon for months. A new shield system that could project a protective barrier around multiple ships at once. If it worked, it could turn the battle. If it failed, they would all die. Power levels are stable, her assistant reported. Ready on your command. Amy closed her eyes for a moment, thinking of her father on the bridge above, thinking of everyone who had died to get them here. Then she opened her eyes and made the call. Activate the Unity shield. A wave of golden light erupted from the New Horizon, spreading outward to embrace every Alliance ship in the fleet. Suddenly, they were no longer fighting alone. They were connected, sharing power, sharing protection, sharing strength. Council weapons that had been tearing them apart now splashed harmlessly against the unified barrier. Alliance ships that had been struggling to survive now stood firm and struck back with renewed fury. On the Eternal Judgment stared at his tactical display in disbelief. What is this? What have they done? His officers had no answers. Nothing in Council history had prepared them for technology like this. Nothing had prepared them for humans. Sam Porter saw the opportunity and seized it. All ships attack Pattern Omega, target the flagship. The Alliance fleet moved as one, surging forward like a spear aimed at the heart of the Council formation. Ships that had been on the defensive suddenly became predators. The Golden Shield held them together, making them unstoppable. The Council flagship found itself surrounded. Its escorts were destroyed or driven off. Sam Porter's ships closed in from every direction. High Arbiter, a panicked officer called out. We cannot escape. Our shields are failing. Looked around at his burning bridge. Smoke filled the air. Sparks flew from damaged consoles. For the first time in his long life, he felt true fear. Send the surrender signal, he said quietly. It's over. The ceasefire spread across the battlefield. Ships stopped firing. The silence of space returned. The Alliance had won. But Jack Monroe knew that military victory was not enough. If they humiliated the Council, if they took revenge, they would only create more enemies for the future. The war would never truly end. He took a shuttle to the Eternal Judgment and walked through its damaged corridors alone. He found sitting in his ruined throne room, surrounded by the wreckage of his ambitions. You came to gloat, asked bitterly. Jack shook his head. I came to offer peace. He laid out the terms, not surrender but partnership. Not humiliation, but cooperation. The Council would recognize human sovereignty and the Outer Rim Alliance. Trade and diplomatic relations would be established, and human terraforming technology would be shared freely to save the dying worlds of Council space. Why? Demanded. You could destroy us now. You could take revenge for everything we did to you. Jack looked at the defeated Arbiter with something that might have been pity. Because revenge would make us no better than you. We were exiled because you feared what we might become. You were right to be afraid, but not for the reasons you thought. Humanity is not dangerous because we destroy. We're dangerous because we build, because we forgive, because we refuse to let hatred consume us. Was silent for a long moment, then slowly he nodded. Perhaps we were wrong about your species, he admitted. Perhaps you were. The Treaty of the Boundary was signed 3 days later. It was not perfect. Many on both sides were unhappy with the compromises, but it was a beginning. Ambassador X led a faction within the council that pushed for genuine cooperation with humans. Other species that had secretly admired humanity's rise now openly allied with them. The galaxy began to change. 10 years after the exile, New Providence had become one of the most important worlds in known space. Ships from 100 civilizations came and went from its orbital stations. Traders, diplomats, scholars, and adventurers all found their way to the heart of the Outer Rim Alliance. Jack Monroe stood on the observation deck of New Providence Station, watching the endless parade of vessels. His hair was gray now, and his face was lined with age, but his eyes still burned with the same determination that had carried him through exile. Lisa Vance joined him at the window. The desert world below was now covered in green forests and blue lakes, her life's work visible from orbit. "We did it," she said softly. "We really did it." Ben arrived with his usual tablet full of reports. "Human goods are the most wanted in the galaxy now. Our trade surplus is enormous. I never thought I'd see the day." Kate brought diplomatic messages. 3 more worlds want to join the Alliance, and the Council is requesting our help with another terraforming project. Amy Dawson came last, her engineering team following behind her. She was famous now, known across the galaxy for her inventions, but she still hugged her father like she was a little girl. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. Jack smiled. "I'm thinking about the day we crossed the boundary line. They told us we were going to die. They threw us away like garbage." He looked around at his friends, his family, his people. "They exiled us to destroy us. Instead, they made us stronger. They thought they were throwing us into darkness, but we found light. We built something beautiful from nothing. And now, the same people who wanted us dead are asking for our help." Sam Porter, gray-haired and still grumpy, joined the group. "So what happens next?" Jack turned back to the window, gazing out at the stars that had once seemed so terrifying and unknown. "We keep building, we keep growing, we keep proving that humanity doesn't break, we adapt, we survive, we thrive." He paused, a small smile crossing his face. "And someday maybe the galaxy will understand that exiling us was the best gift they ever gave us." Below them, New Providence gleamed like a jewel. Around them, ships carried hope to every corner of the Outer Rim, and above them the stars waited for whatever humanity would do next. The exile was over, the future had just begun.